because I know I need to start carrying the conversation.
Yeah, you carry the conversation anyway. Let's be real. Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Dads of Dagobah. We're reviewing the episode 6 of Obi-Wan Kenobi. And I think it's safe to say the series finale, Sean. What'd you think of it?
I thought it was amazing.
Is that your word of the week?
No, my word
Oh.
of the week. Now follow me on this. My word of the week is Simone Biles. Because they stuck the landing, Joseph.
Oh, I like what you did there.
They stuck the landing.
Mm.
I feel like that was as good of a series finale as we could have hoped for.
Yeah, that was a great series finale.
Fantastic.
Here's my word of the week, phrase of the week. You ready for it?
Yes.
Mine is Return of the King Extended Edition.
Because of the
Because
multiple endings.
there were like 6 different endings where I felt like, wow, what a great series. Oh, it's still going. Wow, we're a great series. Oh, still going. So that's my word of the week.
Joseph is recovering. He actually decided he wanted to do some method acting, and he loved the wheezing noises that Vader made during that duel. And he's like, I'm going to incorporate that into the podcast this week.
Listen, I just realized I have a mute button. I can mute myself when I get on these coughing fits.
You should have a bottle of water. Oh, are we sponsored? Oh, you can't see it? Okay.
I got my water right here. I loved that episode so much. There wasn't a bad part of the episode.
I don't think. Go ahead.
I did cry twice during it. So yeah.
I don't think that the world is ready for the amount of hyperbole that I'm going to throw down as we talk through this episode. Also, I just want to draw attention to the color of my lips. I have been eating Doritos tonight, so that is why it looks like I have orange lipstick on.
This is great content we have going on this week for our series finale. I hope you guys see my background here. Robin Williams having his happy thought in the Lost Boys treehouse. Obi-Wan Kenobi also had his happy thought in the... That wasn't Mustafar. I don't know what planet that was, but I think it would be in the Mustafar... No, because they're coming from a different system. I thought they were still in the Mustafar system, but they're at that path base. So I don't think they ever went to hyperspace, right? So they're got to be close to that. Anyway, we'll figure it out someday.
Yeah, I don't think that they named it in the episode. They said they were trying to make it to Tessin, but they needed to jump to Lightspeed to do it, and they weren't
Right.
going to be able to.
Right.
So I don't think it was that planet, so I don't think we got a good name for it, but looked a little bit like Edu from Rogue One.
It did, didn't it? I thought there was some cool symbolism too in that planet, and we'll talk about later when we get to the duel. But let's start with the first part of the episode. Really, I feel like this episode, after the first part, kind of splits into 2 different stories, right? We have the Tatooine story, and we have the Mystery Planet story. Then the duel, I guess, really is what it is. But first, we're on the transport, evading the Imperial Star Destroyer, and they're doing the 5 Ds of dodgeball: dive, duck, dip, dodge, and dive, or whatever they are. They're just swaying back and forth, avoiding the cruiser. They don't send out any TIE fighters because that would be way too easy.
But Vader increases the firepower, so I mean, what more could you ask?
Yeah, when you increase firepower, does it increase the rate of firing or the power of each individual bolt being sent out?
I assumed it increases the power, the actual damage that the laser does.
Okay.
So it would take down the shield faster, maybe? Either way, I guess is the same effect. More more damage output. Now, I will say while we're on this transport ship, I appreciate that the writers kept our great friend Roken consistent throughout this entire show.
Yeah, they sure did.
Because he once again, behind the closed doors, is like, we don't have enough time. He's like, how much? Obi-Wan's like, how much time do you need? He's like, more than we have. And then Obi-Wan says, I'm gonna head out then and try to draw Vader away. And he's like, but we're so close.
Yeah.
I'm like, I thought you just said that we don't have enough time.
Not enough time. Well, my wife pointed out, she's like, last time he was like, we need 3 hours. You have 1. So like, he knows negotiating with Obi-Wan's not really going to get him anywhere, right?
Right.
But I thought it was an interesting choice. We were wondering how Obi-Wan would be separated from Leia, and this was, the way they did it was to draw Darth Vader away. And here's the thing: so some people may be thinking like, "Oh, that seems strange that they would give up the whole ship of young Jedi, really, and go after this one guy." But it just shows how single-mindedly focused Vader is on getting Obi-Wan, and I loved that choice. And the Inquisitor was just like, "Really, really, we're leaving right now?" Anyway,
Listen, I've seen Vader literally murder people for less. I was like, that Inquisitor's getting a little mouthy right now.
I know, right? Go
You don't need to
mouthy
be telling Lord Vader what we're doing, giving him the disapproving stare.
Yeah, a little.
Like, you
Anyway.
better watch yourself before Vader pulls up his hand and just starts choking the life out of you.
Yeah, it seems like Vader doesn't have as much animosity for this Inquisitor than he did Reva. But I mean, obviously, she had a different story, right? He knew she was a youngling, probably suspected her the whole time of being a double agent.
Yeah.
But anyway, the rest of the Inquisitors, we just forget about, I guess. So no need to worry about them.
Which is fine. They were one of the disappointments of the series for sure.
Yeah, the Inquisitors weren't my favorite. Reva was a highlight, in my opinion, after episodes 5 and 6, when we finally got her backstory. And we'll talk about her later. But we go down to the planet. Obi-Wan lands, Darth Vader lands, and it's just, so let's start the fight, right? Any thoughts before we get into the duel?
No, I mean, on the transporter, he has kind of moments with Leia and stuff. And I guess we're also seeing Reva on Tatooine. And she is, looking for a farmer named Owen. And I think it's around this time that we see Owen and Beru start to prepare for Reva. And we find out Aunt Beru is secretly a trained mercenary.
Yeah, who would have
has
known? Little
stashes
Aunt
of
Beru, Blue Milk Beru, is got guns hidden around the place.
She has stashed munitions all over that homestead, and she's like, "Hey, take out this outlet over here. I got a rifle." Oh, throws it at Owen. Owen's like, "What the heck?" He's like, so I thought that was pretty funny. Like, I wondered, we had the casting for young Luke and for Beru. We knew that it was the actress from episode 3 that was reprising the role. And up until this episode, I'm like, we haven't seen a single shot of Beru.
Yeah, I'm glad she was in it.
Yeah. But yeah, obviously the main event was the duel between Vader and Obi-Wan.
Now, here's my little thing I caught, and maybe I'm way off on this. When we see them facing off against each other, Obi-Wan is standing on the left side of the screen with the bunch of peaks, pinnacles behind him, and Vader has emptiness behind him. And to me, that signifies what each of them is fighting for, right? Obi-Wan is protecting. He's the hope. He's the protecting the children, protecting the people. Vader's just rage. It's all about him. It's him versus Obi-Wan, right? So I think in that little symbolism, we see why Obi-Wan is eventually the victor in the fight, right? Because he uses his happy thoughts.
Yeah,
Now,
no.
Kathleen Kennedy called this the rematch of the century. Was it?
I have a few thoughts on this. One,
It's
it
perfect.
is well established in previous Dads of Dagobah videos. This might have even been when we were Salty Socks. Early on in this podcast, we established that you and I have very different feelings about the lightsaber duel from episode 3, Revenge of the Sith.
Yep.
Whereas I think it is the number one duel in the entire franchise. You thought that it was over the top and you hated it.
Well, I don't know that hate it, but it's cheesy at times.
That's what you said. You said you hated it.
Okay, maybe I did.
I'm just kidding. And so saying it's the rematch of the century, it depends on what your expectation was. I do think it lived up to my expectation in terms of the emotional stakes and the just the raw emotion of the duel and then the interaction at the end of the duel. Like, to me, it was top tier Star Wars moment, that interaction.
Yes. Easily top 5.
Yes. Now, was it the rematch of the century in terms of the choreography and the scope of the lightsaber duel? For me, no.
You
But
wanted
that
them
wasn't.
battling on little robot heads? Is that what you wanted, Sean?
Well, all I'm saying
You
is
wanted
it
them swinging their
wasn't.
batons?
It wasn't, but it didn't need to be. Like, if somebody's expectation was, I want to see the same type of scope and length of a duel that we got in episode 3, then they probably felt like, no, it's not the rematch of the century. But I don't think that was the purpose of it, and it didn't need to be that because it was so much more because of that emotional weight to it.
Yeah, I love it. At first, it seems they're pretty evenly matched. Maybe Vader's toying with him a bit, because kind of the things that Vader says was, I can see that your strength has grown, but you still have weakness, right? So it kind of lends you to think that maybe Vader's not putting 100% in. What is it with Jedi / Sith and leaving their opponent not dead yet?
That is exactly what Corey said as we were watching. She's like, when is Vader going to learn to stop walking away from people before they're actually dead?
He just did it with Reva.
Yes. And obviously
Obi-Wan did it with him.
Obi-Wan did it with him. So I will say one thing about this duel is we know that neither of them are going to die because episode 4 happens.
Canon is everything.
Yeah. So we knew going in the stakes of this were not going to be life and death.
Right.
Which is why I feel like they very masterfully made it the stakes emotional, not physical. Like, even when Vader was burying him, no one's worried like, oh no, Obi-Wan's gonna die. Like, it's like, all right, whatever.
Right.
From a suspense standpoint, there wasn't any suspense in that regard. But what I lost my train of thought. I think I was gonna say, well, I lost it. It was a good point though.
So I mean, he's buried in the rubble. We know he's going to survive. It's interesting that Vader leaves him behind, and seemingly is just walking back to a ship like, I finished that easily. Obi-Wan then, I was hoping for not like a montage of him getting his powers back, but some sort of oneness with the Force, right? Something where it's like, okay, he's tapped back into the Force. Qui-Gon has come and slapped him silly and said, listen, you dingo, this is, you don't need to be a hermit anymore in the desert. You can be doing other things to save other people. And I think we kind of got that with his flashes of Luke and Leia. I still wish. Listen, there are so many good things about this episode, so I'm really nitpicking here. I just wish there was a little bit more of coming to the realization that I just wish we could have been shown more. Because ultimately, we see that he is the Jedi Master. He is one with the Force, but it got there a little too quickly for me.
I totally agree.
But maybe it's been building all season, and I just need to rewatch it, and I'll see little moments here and there where, anyway.
I mean, we see a little bit of that, obviously, in episode 3 of the series. He gets bested by Vader. Vader drags him through the fire, and he's scared and like not at all in tune. Then in episode 4, and when he's saving Leia from the fortress, he's getting a little bit better. He's deflecting the blaster bolts, all that kind of stuff. And then episode 5, he faces off against Reva and, defends the little base. But I do, so we have gradually gone up, but I do agree with you. I still got the feeling a little bit at the end of episode 5, he's not back to full form. He needed some sort of moment, I feel like, where you're right, he becomes one with the Force again, or something clicks back into place and he finds that balance. But maybe it just was more subtle, and that's fine. And he had that moment of the flashbacks of Leia and Luke, but that was so quick. And anyway, I think it could have been a bigger moment. But
right,
I do remember what my point was going to be earlier when I was talking about the stakes. Before Obi-Wan goes down there, he tries to communicate with Qui-Gon again. And he basically says, this is it. Either he dies or I do. And so we know that neither of them were going to die, but also the littlest flaw in this whole premise to me was, why is Obi-Wan leaving him again without killing him?
yeah,
Like, we know why, because Darth Vader exists in the original trilogy. So out of necessity, that wasn't going to happen. But really, in that moment, it would make the most sense. Why is Obi-Wan going to repeat the mistake of episode 3, Revenge of the Sith, when he leaves Anakin there on the banks of the river of lava in Mustafar, instead of killing him? He does the exact same thing again.
Yeah, he does.
Where he has beaten Vader now, and he could presumably kill him and rid the galaxy of this evil. And we even have this transformation of Obi-Wan mourning Anakin. I want to talk about that interaction more, but I mean, high level surface.
I think he's just so heartbroken.
He says goodbye, Darth, like he's gotten the closure he needs from Anakin, but he still doesn't kill Darth Vader. Anyway, so
You were hoping. I mean, what's the alternative is what they have a Force Awakens thing where there's a big chasm that goes in between Rey and Kylo, and they're forced apart.
Yeah, it was. There's no perfect way to do it. Obviously, I don't think. I think what we got was phenomenal.
Yes.
And I think that was incredibly well written and crafted to do what they did. Because we needed to see, like we've been saying this whole season, we needed to see Obi-Wan be the master, so that when they meet again in episode 4 and Vader says, when I left you, I was but the learner, now I am the master, we couldn't leave their interaction on Vader beating Obi-Wan, like dragging him through the fire.
And when Darth Vader says to Luke, Obi-Wan once believed, like you do, that there was good in me, right?
Yeah.
Saw that moment too. Let's talk about Obi-Wan gets out of the rock pile. Something about force sneaking. There's a new force power. You can sneak up on someone until you're about a foot away. Then you ignite your lightsaber, and I feel like we've had that a lot where it's like everyone's so sneaky all of a sudden.
My question is, what is everybody's force ability to sense other force users? Because in episode 4, Obi-Wan just being on the Death Star, Vader can feel him.
Well, in episode 2, right? And in this series,
Yeah.
Darth Vader can sense. Well, they both can sense each other.
Right. So I'm just thinking when Vader has buried Obi-Wan alive, can't you sense that he's still alive in there? And you just walk away, turn your back and walk away, and then you don't sense him until he was like a foot away from you.
Oh gosh, you're sure that?
That whole time, like, oh, there he is. Ha!
I was thinking about dinner. Oh gosh.
But yeah. Then this next sequence, Vader is definitely on the defensive, and Obi-Wan, I think, from his, Luke and Leia flashbacks and him tapping into those memories and that love that he has,
Comes Peter Pan.
he becomes Peter Pan.
There you
I
go,
think they've
Peter.
done a really good job in this series too of um showing that Obi-Wan obviously remembers fondly not only his relationship with Anakin but also Padme. And so his love for Luke and Leia are is influenced equally by his relationship with Anakin and Padme.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly.
And so I think, yeah, he draws on that positive energy and stuff. And we see him do some stuff that I was like, okay, Master Kenobi. He's the original Rey Skywalker,
Yeah.
lifting all those rocks.
I thought there were two interesting fight moves. One was they're back to back lightsabering each other, and the other one they were holding
They were
hands,
holding hands.
doing a little tango, a little. Anyway, he throws a bunch of. I mean, what happens first? Does he get his chest plate first, or does he throw the rocks at him first? I guess he gets his chest plate first, which weakens him. Then he pushes him against the rock.
And then
Man,
he
it's
just
so interesting how I was wondering how they're going to have Obi-Wan beat him, and I think they did a great job showing it. That like you only have to you got to go after the machinery part, right?
yeah, for sure.
That's what's keeping him alive, and if you go after that, then kind of a weakling, right?
Yeah.
He's more machine than man.
I completely agree. Yeah, so he busts the center console first, and Vader's wheezing at that point, labored breathing,
Then he like cuts his back,
and he
right?
slashes him across the back. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
and then obviously, the final blow is he jumps off one of those rocks and just cuts right through that mask.
That was an interesting. Yeah, he like jumped, and then like a little finesse.
And then we get obviously a very similar scene that we get in Star Wars Rebels. This almost an identical scene happens, except it's different side of the mask. In Rebels with Ahsoka, where Ahsoka sees um, she sees Anakin's right eye, whereas in
Right.
this one, Obi-Wan's seeing his left eye. And she has an interaction with Anakin in that vein of Anakin and Vader kind of battling it out in this little interaction. I did see already, I kind of jumped onto Twitter after and I saw this interesting take that Ahsoka, Anakin's former Padawan, could remove half of the mask, but ultimately Vader won that interaction. And now we see Obi-Wan, Anakin's master, take off the other side of the mask, and the only one that could completely remove the mask was his son Luke for the full redemption.
Yep.
Thought that was interesting take.
I loved this scene. Is there a better scene in Star Wars? I'm sure, of course there are. But man, oh man, did they hit all the right notes here.
So
First of all,
I definitely was welling up, getting misty eyed at this.
I mean, Obi-Wan, I mean, he was welling up too.
Basically, when he apologized, when he started to say, I'm sorry, I was like, okay, that's it. The tears are flowing.
And like the way they did the voices, oh my gosh.
The fact that it was Hayden's voice and it would get mixed in with the James Earl Jones, and it was so well done because it was hard to even know. It was hard to even know, which I think was intentional, if Anakin or Vader was talking.
Yeah.
Um, and so obviously he says, when Anakin or Vader says, "I'm not your failure, Obi-Wan." Like at that point, I'm like, is that Anakin?
I
Like
think it's Anakin. Because I think
being
earlier in episode 2, it's Darth saying, I am what you made me, right?
right, right,
That's Darth Vader speaking.
right. But I mean, is Anakin saying that like because that in that briefest of moments, Anakin is being nice and like trying to give Obi-Wan comfort, or like what's the motivation in Anakin saying that to him? Or is it just this twisted?
I don't know.
I don't know either.
Well,
Obviously open to interpretation, but they were doing a great job too with the colors because it was like when the blue lightsaber glow was on him, it felt like he was more kind of Anakin-esque. And then when the red was on him, obviously it just felt like Vader had consumed him again and Vader was in control.
right. He said, you didn't kill Anakin. I
Yeah,
killed him.
right. Which kind of again helps episode 4 A New Hope when Obi-Wan tells Luke that Vader killed his father.
Oh, yeah.
That we now have Vader himself admitting, I killed Anakin Skywalker. There's a few little things like that in this episode that is like it's helping massage some of the things between episode 3 and 4 that have existed, and now this is like bridging that gap.
Right. What about the whole Obi-Wan and R2-D2? Didn't help there.
No, it didn't.
Okay, well.
He really needs to jog his memory there.
Uh, anything more we want to talk about this duel? I mean, we've already talked about Obi-Wan leaves him, doesn't finish him off for obvious reasons. I mean, in a vacuum, it seems silly, but you bring up a good point about how Obi-Wan had just been saying to Qui-Gon, one of us is going to die. I like to think that he could have finished him off too, right? He could have finished him off at Mustafar, but he chose not to, right?
But
I think
this
it's
one to
just
me,
not I think it's just not in Obi-Wan's nature.
yeah, I think you're right. The difference to me is in Mustafar, I think Obi-Wan thought he was going to die. And and obviously this series proved in episode 2 that Obi-Wan didn't know that Anakin was alive. So he thought he was dead.
Right.
And now this time, I feel like Obi-Wan walked away knowing that Vader wasn't going to die. He didn't leave him for dead. He just like kind of left in terms of he has closure for Anakin now and is like goodbye Darth.
Yeah. See you around, Darth.
Right. Um so I feel like he has that closure as he no longer has to feel the guilt or the regret of failing Anakin. Like he can be free of that guilt now,
Yeah.
which I think is important. I mean, like I said, when he was apologizing and just saying like I'm sorry Anakin for all of it. Like you just think of the entire prequel trilogy and like all of the failings that Obi-Wan, had in trying to train him because he wasn't
What
supposed to train him. And
what feelings did Obi-Wan have though? This may be a whole new can of worms, but what did he do?
listen, you need to go back and watch some of the dads of Dagobah, what would we change about episode 1, 2, and 3?
I mean, Anakin's turn to the dark side was because of his obsession over the people he loved, right?
Yeah.
And trying to save others. That wasn't something Obi-Wan did.
I think that it's more, Anakin really needed Qui-Gon. He needed a father figure. And Obi-Wan couldn't really provide that.
Obi-Wan was a friend.
Obi-Wan was more of an older brother, kind
Yeah.
of friend figure, and didn't even, originally didn't even really want to train him, was only training him because it was Qui-Gon's dying wish.
So really, it was the failings of Qui-Gon.
Yeah. I guess
And
it's
Yoda who let it happen.
the shared responsibility, the Jedi Council.
Yeah.
But Obi-Wan, I can see why Obi-Wan feels like he obviously played a huge part in it. But anyway, I thought that was a top tier emotional moment for Star Wars, that interaction and that apology, and
yeah,
it's crazy. Anyway, we then leave the planet.
Well, because Reva's on the hunt.
Reva is breaking and entering into the Lars homestead.
I was trying to figure out. Sorry, I almost had a cough there. I was trying to figure out what was her motivation there. I think they left it open ended at the beginning. I was trying to figure out, is she trying to join this side of the? She just wants to find the light side and join them. Then she ignites the lightsaber, and I'm like, oh, I think she's here to kill Luke Skywalker as some sort of revenge against Anakin. What's her motivation here?
What's her motivation, and what does she know?
Does she know he's the son of Anakin?
I feel
I
like
don't think the hologram told her anything.
I don't think so either. And so if that was what we were supposed to believe, I think that's a little bit of a stretch.
Maybe she's put two and two together. But
I think it's a stretch because the hologram. Let me just carry. Let me just carry this. The hologram only says, like, did he find out about the children? Like, if so, I'll go to Tatooine. Owen will need help with the boy. He never says it's Anakin's children or Darth Vader's children or anything. He just says the children and Owen will need help with the boy. So it's a little bit of a stretch to me if we're supposed to believe that Reva has, discerned that.
has she put two and two together that Obi-Wan was there on Tatooine protecting this boy?
I don't know. I'm not sure that she ever knew Obi-Wan was on Tatooine. Obi-Wan never reveals himself on Tatooine.
Oh. Huh, you're right.
He reveals himself on the
that
neon sign planet.
Uh-huh.
Anyway.
Okay. Yeah.
So I agree with you. I'm like, why is she wanting to go and kill the boy?
Yeah.
But things she said and kind of, at the end, her conversation when she was crying and stuff to Obi-Wan, it made me think that we were supposed to believe that she did know that it was
Right.
Anakin's son.
Yeah, that's what I think we're supposed to think. But how she got there, we don't know.
Yeah. So
I mean, it's an interesting. I liked the scene. I mean, it's a typical fight scene with zero stakes. We know all three of them will survive. We know nothing's going to happen to Luke, really. But they did it so well in that they gave closure to her character too.
totally.
She had the opportunity to become Darth Vader, to kill a youngling, and to get revenge, right? And she chose not to. And people can gripe and complain about all these redemption stories in Star Wars, but that's the beauty of Star Wars. It's all about redemption stories, right? Now, in video games, in Battlefront 2, when you're told you're going to be playing as an Imperial officer for the whole game, and then that changes after the first mission, and you're like, now, wait a second here. that's a little fishy. But in Star Wars in general, it's all about redemption. Darth Vader, biggest example. Kylo Ren, now Reva. I think the only one who doesn't have a redemption story is Palpatine. I mean, even General Hux has a redemption story. I'm the spy.
Yeah. I agree with you. I think that this was a great way to close the character arc for Reva. I I do think it's a mini redemption. I I don't know, I think Obi-Wan's statement is poignant at the end. What she does now or who she
Right.
becomes is up to her.
Yes.
Like we don't necessarily know that she's all of a sudden going to turn to the light and be like a fantastic person, but she has the choice because she didn't go down the path that Anakin went down.
She actually didn't bury her lightsaber in the sand yet, so.
And frankly, when she was carrying Luke's body up to all three of them, I was sitting there thinking, like, Obi-Wan, you better ignite that lightsaber. You need to show some force here and threaten her because you
Oh my
don't know
gosh,
what's happening.
there's a giant desert. We'll go find her on foot. I came in on a spaceship. Let's run. Oh, there she is.
There she is, and she's carrying his limp body, and we're just all staring at her.
Yeah, and then she drops off the body, and Owen and Beru are like, "Thank you." Like, okay.
Yeah. But I
Anyway,
thought it was a great closure for her character.
are we going to see her in future stuff? Andor? Are we going to see her in Andor?
Maybe. I from all of these, character arcs in this series and things that were done really well, I don't know that, the rumors of a season 2, I don't know that we need a season 2.
Yeah. What would be the story now?
I don't think that we need a spin-off series for Reva. She had a great arc, and I think she's gotten the closure that she needs.
Agreed. I'd agree.
Um,
We were
and
kind of
I
speculating last week that her season 2 would be her finding Luke and Obi-Wan having to protect her or protect him, right?
right.
Well, that happened in the last 5 minutes of the episode. So
I also feel like we now have enough closure with Obi-Wan that we don't need to see more interactions between Obi-Wan and Vader.
oh yeah, no, no, I'm fine. I want to see Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan.
That's
Listen,
true. We haven't gotten there yet, but
listen.
we need a buddy cop series of Force Ghost Qui-Gon with Obi-Wan.
Oh, talk about the waterworks. My gosh, my favorite Jedi of all time, back on screen. Love it.
And his hair's been growing. It's crazy. Force Ghosts, their
Oh,
hair grows.
last time we saw him, well, I guess we heard him in episode 9, and then we hear him in episode 2. Anakin, no. Anyway, I love him.
Well, we're getting ahead of ourselves because Obi-Wan takes a little joyride over to Alderaan.
Yeah, and is treated like the Swiss or the Swedes treat their guests. Oh, thank you for coming. Okay, bye.
I said that exactly the same thing to Corey. When he left, I'm like, he flew halfway across the galaxy for an 8-minute visit? And
Yeah.
he's just like, see you later? I'm like, he
Here's your,
can't even spend the night?
here's your droid. I'm out of here.
But I thought that that was a really nice emotional moment too, that he's sharing with Leia, letting her know, attributes that she has from her parents.
Yeah. I was a little taken back by he describes these are the 3 things from your mother. And then he says 3 more things, and I'm like, also Padme. Padme also was all 3 of those things, not just Anakin. Yeah, it was a great moment. Who gives a 9-year-old, 10-year-old a gun holster, a blaster holster? Hey, I don't care what your parents think. Here you go.
Well, now it's Lola's house. Lola kind of snuggled into it at the end there.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, then this is another interesting point we've been talking about. We talked about it in earlier episodes. Leia then asks him, will I ever see you again? And he says, maybe someday if you need help from an old, tired old man. They kind of laugh. But then he says, but probably no one should know for both of our safety. Which again goes back to when she sends the message with R2-D2 and she just says,
you served my father.
You served my father in the Clone Wars. She doesn't let on that, hey, remember me from when you saved me when I was 10 years old and we went on that adventure?
Yeah.
So that just with a single line like that, they were able to massage that so it doesn't break the canon.
Canon is everything. I think before that scene, we got a scene with Darth Vader on Mustafar with a new helmet, speaking to old Palpy, old Sheev.
How many backup helmets do you think he has?
He's got to have bunches.
Like 7 or 100?
Well, how many Snokes does Palpatine have? He had like 4, right? As many Snokes as Palpatine has, how many helmets Vader has?
Listen,
Backups that Palpatine never uses. Why
if
do you
I
have
was
backups of Snoke?
if I was Vader, I'd have about 20 backups on Mustafar. I'd have about 20 more on the Star Destroyer. I'd have 15 or so on Coruscant when I'm visiting the Emperor in the Imperial Palace. I would just have a stash everywhere.
Vader kind of gets chewed out by Palpatine.
What was that? What'd you say?
I said Vader kind of got chewed out by Palpatine there. We've sent probes out all through the galaxy. We'll find him. And Palpatine's like, yo, chillax, bro.
Like, yeah,
There's
like,
other
oh,
stuff to be worried about.
and he's like, oh, you must obviously, he must have some sort of hold over you because you can't seem to shake the idea of this is your only thing you're supposed to be doing right now. Anyway, Corey and I were talking about that where it was like that was Palpatine saying all that kind of stuff kind of explains why maybe Vader stops the hunt for Obi-Wan.
Yeah. Yeah, because you would imagine in the 10 years between this and A New Hope, he never finds him. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the Palpatine talked to, I think that's a great point. So,
but then we're back. Obi-Wan is
Tatooine.
on Tatooine and Obi-Wan is packing up his little cave.
Gosh, I thought for sure. I was so ready for Qui-Gon at any moment throughout this episode, and I thought for sure it would be here. Leaving the cave, looking around, Qui-Gon pops up. And then when he didn't, I thought, we're not going to, there's no Qui-Gon. There's not going to be Qui-Gon in this whole episode.
Well, the first time I thought we were going to get Qui-Gon was actually when Obi-Wan was buried alive.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I made the comment out loud to Corey. I'm like, Qui-Gon's got to help him out of this. Qui-Gon's got to move these boulders or something.
Mm-hmm.
And it obviously didn't happen. And I also was thinking, sadly, at this point in the episode, I had almost forgotten about Qui-Gon. It was so everything else happening, I wasn't even really thinking about it. But you and I have mentioned so many times during this series, they teased it so frequently that it had to happen. And yeah, he's cleaning up this cave like he's moving out, but we know that he lives in like a structure, a house in the Dune Sea. And so I was like, oh, is he moving out? Like gonna go and move into his new house? Like he's gonna, what's happening here? But he ends up back at the Lars homestead. And some of the conversation I was a little surprised by because he kind of tells Owen, you're all the protection he needs now. You were right. He just needs to be a boy. I don't need to train him to be a Jedi. The future is going to take care of itself. Like you don't need me basically. Like he has you and Baru and that's all he needs. And Owen even kind of snarky is like, I thought you were going to keep your distance. And Obi-Wan's like, I will. And when all that is being said, I'm like, but aren't you just kind of moving into a different house nearby?
I don't think he's nearby anymore. I think we're supposed to, I mean, obviously he's still in the area, but I think we were led to believe in that cave, he's close enough that he can be spying on him pretty regularly, right?
Yeah. That's true.
And I think he's moving on from that.
That's true.
And that ties up the whole, I wonder if they mean all Ben Kenobi.
Yeah.
But what does Owen say to Luke about Ben Kenobi? Didn't he say like he died around the same time as your father? No. Didn't he say something like that?
I think he does. Yeah, I think he does. Obviously, just trying to deter Luke from
right.
making contact. But yeah, obviously Luke knows about him. And then so back to this episode, Obi-Wan's leaving and Owen's like, "Hey, Ben, do you want to meet him?" And that's when we get Uncle Ben giving Luke the T-16 Skyhopper model for him to play with. And the word of the week should have been fan service or fanboying, because we got the hello there. And I swear, I don't know if this is true. It sounded like they like mixed Ewan's voice at that moment with the actual Alec Guinness line from A New Hope. Like it seemed like this same exact like inflection.
Oh, really?
Kind of mixed together, but maybe not.
Well, I wonder what they did with the Inquisitor's line from last week. Hello.
Anyway, so
what a great way to give that to us. Because when was it earlier where he said hello to someone and we're like, really? He's not going to do the line? Say it.
Right.
Say it already.
Right. But
When
then
was
we
that?
get him.
Anyway, sorry.
We get him riding off into the sunset, and I will say I made a comment earlier in this series that I kind of was like wishy-washy on the score, the theme song. But I feel like in this riding into the sunset, it feels good. The music felt good. You know what it kind of reminds me of? I know this is a tangent. That opening title screen when Obi-Wan comes on the screen and like the dust or whatever, and that music is swelling. It sounds like very similar to the theme song from the PlayStation 4 Spider-Man game. I always think it's like the same song, but anyway, you can you loyal viewers can go and Google those too and
interesting.
see if there's any similarities there.
Well, I mean, John Williams wrote the theme for Obi-Wan. I don't think John Williams wrote PlayStation 4 Spider-Man.
Maybe John though is
You telling me John Williams did a
closet gamer?
Plagiarism?
I think he's a closet gamer and he just was playing Spider-Man one weekend and he's like, I love this leitmotif. But anyway, then the moment Joseph has been waiting for his entire life.
Oh my gosh.
We start to see this subtle little crackling of, is that
such
a Force
good
ghost?
moment? He hasn't abandoned him. He's been there the whole dang time.
Been there the whole time, but he wasn't ready to see.
Wasn't ready.
And what I love about the moment, selfishly, would I have liked to see more Qui-Gon in the series?
1000%.
Absolutely. Would I have liked to see maybe something like Yoda from The Last Jedi, where he demonstrates some show of force power? That would have been cool. Like
Jedi
lifting the rocks off of Obi-Wan to unbury him from being buried alive. That would have been really cool.
Uh-huh.
But all of that said, this was as close to perfect as I think it could have been, because it wasn't overbearing and it was just such a nice moment without it being too over the top.
Yeah.
And it was it went well with the dialogue. That Qui-Gon didn't need to do some big flashy thing because he's like, I've been here the whole time. And so it just was like seeing an old friend, and you know, I just thought it was so, you know, sweet and nice and funny that Qui-Gon's like, come on, we've got a long way to go, and turns and starts walking. Like,
Yep.
like I've been here and I'm going to continue to be here.
And the smile on Obi-Wan's face, he's like, Master Qui-Gon.
Yeah, and he just was kind of like, I started to think you'd never come. And Qui-Gon, yeah, I've been here the whole time.
And what's Yoda been up to this whole time? Eating frogs on Dagobah?
Yes, he's been losing his mind. He's in early onset dementia.
Where's Grogu been?
Yeah. But yeah, I thought it was a fantastic way to end the series.
I got a question for you before we wrap things up.
Okay.
Better as a 6-part series or a 2.5-hour movie?
I'll take the 6-part series. Because how long is the runtime of if you put you take the credits off of each
I don't know,
episode?
40 minutes. 40 minutes times 6. So that's
Yeah.
240.
So
So that
that's
would be about 3.5 hours. No, it'd be 4 hours.
that would be 4 hours.
Yep.
Now I feel like you probably could cut. I would say you could probably cut 30 to 45 minutes of fluff out of that 4 hours. So I'd rather have the 4 hours than a 2 hour or even a 2.5 hour movie that I felt like didn't get to explore all the things we got to
Fair enough.
explore.
Yeah, I think there were some, overall with the series, I felt like there were some silly parts, and we've talked about that ad nauseum, and hiding Leia under the trench coat, and the whole thing about the Fortress Inquisitus, and anyway, I mean, some interesting choices made, but overall, when Simone Biles this, they did it right. They stuck the landing.
They stuck the landing, and I mean, I really think that it had some top Star Wars moments, like including all of the multi-$100 million movies that they have produced.
Yep.
Um,
There were some weird moments.
of course, the episode 1 when Leia's getting chased through the woods in Alderaan. I'm like, what is happening right now? um, yeah, so definitely goofy moments. But that's also like part of Star Wars.
Yeah.
Like even the movies have moments like that you're like, what is this? Um, but overall, to me, this is top tier Star Wars content. I appreciate it because I feel like it gives me hope for the future of Star Wars television shows, and we can now say that statistically, the Book of Boba Fett was an anomaly.
Yeah.
Because The Mandalorian and the Kenobi show have both been fantastic.
Yes.
So 2 out of the 3 Star Wars shows have been fantastic.
Well, 3 out of the 4, right? 2 seasons of Mando, 1 season of Kenobi.
Yeah.
I will say that we said so many times this has to be good, it has to be. I think we can safely say it was good. It was great.
Yes.
That wraps it up for our episode 6 and series review of Obi-Wan Kenobi. Next up, probably see you again in September when we start talking, or August.
I think it's in August that Andor comes out.
Andor comes out. Kind of seems like a little bit of a solo thing we have going on here, where it's so soon after Kenobi and so little press so far. If you remember with The Last Jedi and Solo, they were about 5 months apart, and we didn't get any solo content until after Last Jedi was out of theaters, it seemed. We do have a teaser trailer of Andor, but I wonder when that will start ramping up soon. But that is a 2-season show. We're getting our first season in a couple months. So,
And each season is like 10 or 12 episodes, right?
yeah, it's a long one. Yep.
So that's really breaking the mold for Disney Plus shows, because almost every Disney Plus show has been a 6 or 7 episode
Yep.
series. And I know this show isn't a Star Wars show, but I think it could impact future Star Wars shows. I'm very interested to see what's going on with this Miss Marvel show right now, because it came out on Disney Plus. The numbers haven't been great. It's the lowest viewed MCU show that they've produced so far. And I don't think that it's any
going toe to
coincidence.
toe with Obi-Wan, right?
I don't think it's any coincidence that it came out halfway through Obi-Wan's run, and Obi-Wan's getting all the hype. And now this other Marvel show has come out and no one's really watching it. I mean, no one. I mean, relative. There's still a ton of people watching it, obviously.
Yeah.
But compared to the other shows, the number of viewership has dropped drastically. And so obviously that can affect what Disney feels like they need to do in terms of pacing of when they release shows and how long these shows should be. And well, we can't do too many shows, or we can't release all these shows at the same time because people won't watch them unless it's one big event at a time. So we'll see how that affects everything. But I will be curious to see how Andor does. I'm excited for it.
It's going to be a totally different show than what we're used to.
Yes. I think it'll be kind of definitely grittier. And I'm hoping that because it's a longer format, that we'll get a little bit more kind of character development and stuff like that. Side characters and world build a little bit more.
Yeah. Going back to Coruscant. Anyway, let us know what you thought about episode 6 and the Obi-Wan Kenobi series as a whole. Do you think there's going to be a season 2? Do you think Reva is fully redeemed? How many helmets does Darth Vader have in his Mustafarian castle? Is that the right word? Mustafarian? Anyway. But with that, Sean, this has been the way.
And we have spoken. And we'll see you next time on The Dads of Dagobah.